Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast, the podcast for fans like you. We today are talking about this wonderful game in Baltimore in which the Seahawks lost 37-3. I'm Robert Smith, your host, along with my co-host, Adam Stellman. And today we have Mitch from the 12 Talk podcast joining us. So, guys, hello. Let's talk Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what we're here to do. Yeah, I'm I'm not sure how to get across how painful this game was for me to watch. I mean, I'm sure it was for every single Seahawks fan out there. And I have family in Baltimore, and I was getting texts the entire time. So that was great. Also, look, we said, right, Rob, that neither of us thought when we did our game predictions for the week that we neither of us thought that the Seahawks were going to be able to pull out a win in Baltimore. We thought this would be a pretty tough road trip for them. And when we assumed it would be a hard-fought game, that we would probably come up a little bit short. And I don't think either of us thought that there would be this, the ineptitude. I don't think either of us expected the ineptitude that we saw on the field Sunday. And that was what was shocking. Because I think when there was a moment when it was 14-3, I think was the score after the first quarter, right? 14-3, where I thought, okay, I mean, we're going to be behind this whole game. I think we can still make it interesting in the fourth quarter, and we can still battle through this. And that was the last moment of any kind of solace that I had for the rest of the game, because after that it was just all bets are off. Clearly, the Seahawks are not going to be able to mount any kind of offense, and the defense was clearly not wanting to be out there anymore. I think after the first quarter, and yeah, I mean, I can't really blame them. I mean, they were on the field for over 40 minutes this game, and that's just not a winning formula. So, yeah,
I'll say this, right, as a UK based Seahawks fan, the absolute silver lining on that cloud was that at the end of the game, having watched the whole thing, in the UK it was 10 p.m. and I could just go to sleep and shut it out. Whereas in America, I realized that game was the start of your Sunday, and for you, Adam, receiving text from Ravens fans, I'm sure that was a long day. For me, that was the end of it, and I could just shut everything out. So that was a silver lining. It was a painful watch, and you mentioned being 14-3 at halftime. I'm going to wind you back a couple of minutes from that, and the feeling I had when we'd intercepted. It was an interception. Or was it the fumble from Trey Brown? That was second half, wasn't it? The interception was.
No, that was pre.
you're talking about the strip. You're talking about the strip sack, Boye Mafe.
Yeah. The strip sack, Boye Mafe, just before halftime, and I was thinking, okay, well, good field position, a couple of shots at the end zone. Worst case scenario, field goal. We close this a little bit, and we come out with a bit of momentum in the second half. I know we weren't receiving to start the second half, but some momentum going in. We put a score up and go in. To see it immediately turned back over in great field position was awful. That was the moment for me where I thought, this is not our day. In fact, I'll wind you even further back. First drive, I think it was the first drive of the season we haven't scored a point on. Every game this season, we've marched the ball up the field and scored. That was a huge bad omen for me. So, first half had a few moments that I think that were pretty sort of damning on our chances in that game. They kind of foretold what was coming in the second half, I think. That was my take.
Yeah, I'll just speak right to that. It was the Trey Brown fumble was the one right before halftime. And I have right here in my notes that the punch-out fumble was great. Like, that was a big play Trey coming out and doing what he's been doing for us. And then that right there was the momentum pendulum. Right. It all of a sudden started moving back to the Seahawks. And then the offense couldn't do anything with it. it looked like, okay, we're just gonna have a 3 and out. It's kind of the way that was feeling, and then all of a sudden, Geno Smith strip sack. They recover on a short field, and at that point, you're just praying they don't put up a touchdown before halftime, and that killed any chance that the Seahawks had, I think, going forward. They could have come out with, vintage Tom Brady after halftime, and I still don't think they would have won that game, just because at that point the team was demoralized.
But that's kind of the thing that's hanging over with, though, right? I mean, like, how do you come out? I mean, we were down 2 scores. That's not an insurmountable problem. I mean, that happens all the time. 2 scores is not that, and it wasn't even 2 full scores. It was 11 points. But you're right. I think that it did look like when we came out at halftime, especially after the Ravens drove down the field and scored on their opening reception for the half, it just looked like the team gave up. And I shouldn't say that, because I don't want to speak for the players on the field. It doesn't look like the team gave up, but it did look like we didn't have any kind of drive or momentum. The team did look demoralized, to use your word, Rob. And that's concerning. I mean, I think that was kind of the start of the second half woes. I think that the missed tackles certainly started in the second half with the defense, and you can go back and say part of that's because they were on the field for so long. But at half, they really hadn't been on the field that long. And it's one of those things where it seems to be like compounding issues, right? Where the defense is on the field too much, and then the offense comes out and gets frustrated and unable to put anything together. The defense has to come back out, and then what does that do with the culture on the sideline? But yeah, it just looked like after halftime, no one was able to kind of come out of this slump, and that's what's concerning to me, because that's where you get a chance to go into the locker room and make some adjustments. And we'll talk about that in a second, but this has been a concern, I think, since week 1 of the season, and maybe even into, we can talk a little bit about preseason, but I think since week 1, you go back and watch that game, the Rams game, it looked like, okay, the first half, yeah, we had a few offensive woes and there were some tackling issues on the defense, but it was a close game coming out of halftime. And then the second half comes, and it looks like clearly we did not know how to make those second half adjustments. And I think that this game had a very similar kind of feel to it, where it looked like, okay, yeah, we were behind, but still had a chance coming out of halftime. And then the second half was just all ineptitude.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I'm going to put this out here because I think this is a fitting point to stick here. Adam and I were talking, and, we all think that we're these big sports talk, podcasters. We have all these opinions and experience.
We're so smart.
And really, I got to thinking about some of our recent shows, and Adam and I have had sort of a negative cloud that kind of hung over us. And so I decided that we're really more like those cantankerous old guys from the Muppets, Stadler and Waldorf. That's who Adam and I are right now. So thank you, Mitch, for joining us and brightening this cloud a little bit.
Yeah, because
I'll try and be positive.
I was going to say, British people known for their positivity.
Absolutely.
It's a boon to have you on board. No, but but Mitch, honestly, talk that, because I do think that to Robbie's point, it did look like there was no drive behind the team, no force, no will, no attitude coming out of halftime, and I think that was a big issue. I mean, it did look like they had given up.
Yeah, the big thing that was missing for me, if you go back the last sort of, ever since Witherspoon and Adams have been back, the one thing we've really sort of regained is that attitude and juice and that buzz around the defense. They just seem to ignite a little bit extra in everyone around them. They really sort of injected that real energy that some very few guys can really bring to a team. And I don't know whether we just had that beaten out of us or whatever early doors, but there just didn't seem to be that that energy or juice around it. Sometimes even when you're losing, you need someone to really pick the guys up. One big play, spark everything off, get everyone flying around, buzzing around that a little bit quicker. We didn't seem to ever really have that. We seemed like a beaten team all the way through. And I think for the defense, we might be coming to a point. And again, like you, Adam, I don't want to speak to the mentality of the players or say people are giving up, because that assumes character flaws that I don't think are really there with this group. But I do think when we're 8 games into the season as the Seahawks, other teams are 9, but we're 8. We've had our bye week already. We should be that little bit fresher than everyone else. But our defense essentially has played 11 games worth of defense in 8, rather than, they're further down the line. And when you look at your offense and you've had that kind of start as a defense, maybe you're looking at it thinking, okay, it's been a bit rough on offense. We're doing a bit more than we should, but at least they're improving. I don't see that some of the offensive issues we've had and the play calling issues, the lack of identity, the lack of Seahawks identity on our play calling is returning at the moment. It feels like it needs a kind of snap. Okay, back to basics. This is who we are. Just a big snap sort of reset. It seems to have just wandered so far. If you're that defense, you're looking at it like, we are absolutely destroyed. We're really tired. We keep with three snaps on offense and we're back on the field. Or just when it feels like we're getting a rest, that suddenly there's a pick or a fumble and we're back on again. They are getting overworked. They started the game brilliantly, by the way, especially on run D.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
that quickly fell off. I think they saw, okay, it's going to be another one of these days where the offense can't hold a drive. I think it's just they are very overused for 8 games into a season, and I don't think they see things improving necessarily when the offense trots out at the moment. So there might be a little bit of a, come on, guys, like, we need you to do your bit here, because we are really, and their performances have been outstanding in recent games as well. It's not just they're being overused. They have found a way to really dig deep and get it done.
Yeah, look, the catalyst to winning the Browns game, where we were behind in the fourth quarter with the Browns game, the catalyst of that was the turnover by the defense. I mean, that really sparked it. And then we get that brilliant 2-minute drive. But there's a catalyst play there, right? Someone makes a play from defense, it bolsters the team up, everyone kind of gets back on board. And we obviously didn't have that moment in this Ravens game. We would have needed about 5 of them, I think. But and the problem is those moments just in football games, just speaking generally, are few and far between. I mean, those moments happen maybe once a game, and they don't happen every game. So if that's what we're relying on for this offense to get going, we're in trouble. Now, I know we need to get to our 5 keys and kind of go through the game stuff, and I know we'll get to some of this later, Rob. But I do think that it's worth kind of remembering, and I know we'll come back to this a little bit later. But what's the issue on offense, and where do we need to make the change, and where do we go from here? Because this obviously is not sustainable for the next 9 weeks.
No, and we'll definitely hit that here in these first couple keys. I'm sure we'll talk all about what that offense needs to do. I will say I was actually going to bring up the fact that the defense started pretty well. Yeah. In fact, the second drive for the Ravens, they got the Ravens to 4th and 1. And then Draymond Jones had a offside or the false, whatever it is, the defense offside. There he goes.
Yeah, encroachment. It was encroachment. Was the
it's
call,
encroachment? Yeah, and everybody knew it was going to happen. Anybody who's ever watched a football game knew they were going to line up and hard count that. And he jumped, and I think that kind of, the defense, they're all jazzed. Oh, we got him on 4th down. We're going to stop them. We know they're going to run this ball. Bam, and then all of a sudden they're like, all right, well, okay, 1st and 10 again. Let's get lined back up. And then that's kind of where you start to see the wind come out of the sails a little bit.
Well, I got to. Sorry, Rob, not to cut you off, but I got to say, I mean, I think that's another problem to kind of look at now, because I do think that at this point in the season, 8 games in, are these mental errors that we're seeing. I mean, is this chronic? I mean, we're talking about. I mean, going back to the Legion of Boom days. I mean, Michael Bennett was notorious for that. Now, we had enough juice in the secondary and on that defensive line that we could make up for that, even if we had those slip-ups multiple times a game, which we did in those days. I don't know that again, I still think this is, and I said this earlier in the season when we were on the podcast, that I think this is the most talented defensive lineup the Seahawks have ever had. And I don't think that's debatable. I think it just player for player, this is the most talent we've ever had on defense. But these kind of mental errors at this point in the season, if they, I mean, and again, no, that may not have been a big turning point in the game, just that one line of offsides. But again, it could have been. So, yeah, I mean, going back to Mitch's point, where we see, and it's not just offense, but we see these little mistakes that have been incremental continuing for the entire season without any kind of improvement. And when it comes to defense, while I think the defense has overall improved as the season has gone on, I don't know that the discipline has.
Speaking of discipline, one thing I'm going to bring up, you called on the Brit for some positivity, and here we go. One thing that definitely was better in this game in terms of discipline was the amount of flags. I think we had, was it four flags in the game? There were some critical ones.
5, I think.
Is it 5? Okay. Yeah, we've been worse than that in almost every game this year, and it has been a real bugbear for me. Not just the amount of flags, but some of the really impetuous, stupid ones that were incredibly ill-timed. Granted, Draymond Jones one early in the game. You mentioned it. It was so obviously a hard count, and he jumped the gun horribly at a crucial moment. But in general, that was better. And funnily enough, if you look back to the games where DK's lost his rag and has done some stupid things in multiple games, how did it happen in those games and not this one where he had one catch for 50 yards and we got shut out? How is this not the game that happened?
I can tell you how. I can tell you
Oh.
how it happened. They sat him for a week because of all the penalties, and they said, "Hey, this is not happening again."
I think he was sat as well. I think he.
Yeah, I think it's clear that was what happened. So
yeah.
But to your point, yes. I mean, maybe that's one positive to look at here is that DK kept his cool for 60 minutes. Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess round of applause to DK for being an adult for 60 minutes. And I'm not trying to take away from that. That's obviously a positive thing, and great if that continues for the rest of the season. But is that enough to help this offense get over its ineptitude?
True.
I don't know.
Well, the other thing is I will give one shout out to Shane Waldron in this game. He did one thing brilliantly. It was a bit of a masterstroke, actually. And I don't know how many people noticed this, but he took the mentality of can't fail in the red zone if we never get there. So, that
I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, Mitch. I knew I was like, he's setting us up. There's no way this is a real thing.
No. I mean, usually he scripts a really good opening drive. Didn't happen here. Usually he's, not particularly good at calling plays in game and reacting, and that was on point for his usual standard. And then usually red zone's a bit of a lottery, and we just didn't even go there. So you can't fail in the red zone if we never get there. That's Waldron's new motto. Deep shots or nothing from here.
I love it. All right, so let's get into these 5 keys since we've pretty much hit every one of them so far. All right, so our first key to success that we had coming into this was we have to get the momentum early. We have to come out hot. We need to score early and score often, and well, that didn't happen. So I'm just going to say no. There's no way they even came close to this.
No, look, I mean, we scored 3 points in our second drive. I don't think that was awful. I mean, I guess great for finally getting points on the board after we were already down by 14. But, yeah, that's clearly not starting hot, is it? And that's the thing. And then to Mitch's point there, Shane Waldron's big thing has been we've looked and we've said this a million times, Rob. When we've got these scripted plays to open the game, it looks like he's a brilliant play caller. Well, he was exposed for this game, right? Because clearly it's not brilliant play calling. We've been able to get good momentum on offense to start the game, and that didn't happen here. And that exposed his deficiencies as a play caller, because those 3 points on our second drive are the only points that we scored in this game. Sorry to yell that, but just to emphasize.
No, but it's good. You punctuated the point. It was good. I liked it. And I would say this as well. I think I'll give Waldron another little prize, a very small prize. that first, I think it was our first drive where Njigba juggled the ball as he was going out of bounds.
Yeah.
That put an end to the first drive, I think. And whilst I wouldn't want him to be, I wouldn't want him to be reliant on throwing the ball on third and was it 3rd and 5? Third and 6?
I thought that was like 3rd and 6. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be relying on that to keep drives going on your first, necessarily. But it was a catch you'd expect a player of his caliber to take. It wasn't a poorly thrown ball. It looked like he had it. He readjusted with it, fumbled it. His momentum carried him out. That was quite unfortunate. That could have been a masterpiece of a drive that he'd drawn up, and it was just screwing up in the bin, and then onto his sort of reactionary play calling, which we know is not great. So.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think if that ball, if it had been called a catch, I think it would stay a catch. If you go look through the replay, it looks like he had actual control of the ball as he went out of bounds. I think there's a little bit of give and take there. Obviously, it was called a no catch, and then it was, confirmed as a no catch. But yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, one little thing goes different, and we'll never know, right? We'll never know if Jackson Smith-Njigba catches that ball. What does that first drive end up being? Do we continue marching down the field? I obviously don't think that's going to be the case, because clearly we didn't get any other kind of momentum going. But it's possible. But I think the biggest issue is it seems to be like when we have these scripted plays, they're still very basic. I mean, yes, I think that the personnel alignment can be a little new or shifty and kind of look cool. And we've got a tight end and a running back in the backfield, and they do a little pre-snap motion, but it's not as if, I mean, look at the first two plays of that drive are Kenneth Walker to the right off tackle, Kenneth Walker to the left off tackle. I mean, yeah, it's not like Shane Waldron has reinvented the wheel with his offensive play call. I do think he's a good play designer, but we've seen the execution on the field. So,
yeah. In fact, this will just lead us right into our second key to success. So we mentioned it a few times. In fact, Mitch, you nailed it right, hit it right on the head. Can Shane Waldron adjust? No. I mean, that's been his Achilles heel all season, is that when anything goes contrary to the plan, he has a hard time reacting. It goes all the way back to week 1 when the tackles got injured and he didn't immediately shift to calling short passing plays or having inline tight ends or using play action or kind of roll out boot action to move the pocket. Those are some immediate things that even a high school offensive coordinator would immediately start doing because you have an immediate deficiency on the field. And we've seen it every single game where there's a panic mode for Shane Waldron and he doesn't adjust very well. I tweeted this out today from my personal account in response to something somebody else said. Shane Waldron has a great offensive mind. He comes from this background of being a passing game coordinator. And at times you see that because he forgets the running game exists, or he forgets how to mix it in so that you at least have a seemingly balanced offense. But just like I said, his Achilles heel is mid-game adjustments, which affect his play calling. So it snowballs. I'm not somebody to call for somebody's job. I don't like mid-season coach firings. That's not where I'm headed with this. So, but I think they need to add somebody. This is a prime opportunity for the Seahawks to go out and hire an experienced offensive coordinator to come in and be the run game coordinator and the game day offensive play caller.
Yeah.
Let Shane Waldron design plays because that's what he's brilliant at.
I really like that idea. And I think also if it was a run game coordinator, it could reestablish some priority for the run game. I think we give up on the run game a lot recently. I'd almost be happier going 3 and out if there were 2 run plays in the 3. and we were leaning on, okay, Ken Walker's a star player for us. We're relying on him. We should be relying on him. Here is 2/3 of these, our first 3 downs. Make it 3rd and short, or get it over the line when it's 3rd and 3, or even when it's 3rd and 6. Maybe throw, get him out wide and toss him the ball, or just. I feel like players like DK Metcalf aren't getting utilized properly at the moment because we're not causing defenses to have to adjust to our run game. He's always been a player that thrives off the intermediates or the deep balls once you've dominated a team with the run game and they have to adjust to stop it. So that play calling sequencing, I think, is a big part of what is stopping other key components of our offense from being utilized. And I think the utilization of our offense is as big of a problem as anything else, and I think it's just teams aren't having to adjust. The Baltimore Ravens were basically just rushing extra safeties and defensive backs on almost every play, which became a nightmare because we were never in 13 personnel, 12 personnel with extra bodies to pick them up. Gino was under duress the whole game, and if that's the case, and you're still drawing up plays that need time to mature to get Lockett and DK into the game, you're not going to see them in the game. The one time that we had a clean pocket, we actually saw a 50-yard play snapped off.
Yeah,
surprise!
Funny how that works.
Yeah, and I'll throw one little Waldron joke in here that I've cracked. Apologies if I've cracked it on this podcast already. I can't recall, but I've often suggested that Waldron is that person at college or school that gets someone else to do his homework, because the work that he turns in, that's pre-planned and has been done before the day, is actually pretty great. But when you put him on the spot and give him a pop quiz, he fails miserably. So it makes you question who is actually doing the stuff pre-game. And is what you get on the touchline just him off the top, just coming off the top of his head. It does almost seem like someone's helping him out with his that is obviously a joke, but it does almost look like, it's a little bit in there that might be true. But that's the way I'm seeing it at the moment. His work that he does outside of the game is outstanding. The work he does when he's put under pressure and has to see things from his sideline position and make calls, it's just lackluster and unimaginative, and it seems like he's not watching the same game we are at times as well.
Well, he's clearly not watching the same game as us. And again, I think that if he just spent some time up in the booth, he might get a little bit different perspective. But I think, going back to your point, Mitch, I mean, we know this is true in life, right? There are people that test well, and there are people that study well. They're not necessarily the same people. Sometimes they are, yes, but a lot of times they're not. And do we need to get? We obviously know that this guy does not test well. I mean, yes, he's a great he studies well and he plans well, but he doesn't test well. So let's have him be on the project. We need another guy in there. And I think and we're going to get to this a little bit later because I know we want to move on with the rest of these keys. But I think, Robbie, just to remind you, so you end up throwing this back at some point, is the idea of possibly bringing in a run game coordinator and someone else to do the play calling on Sundays. Because again, you go back and you watch the second half of this game. Not even, I forget the second half. Let's just go to the fourth quarter. 3 run plays in the fourth quarter. There were 3. We only had 3 possessions. We had 3 run plays. So 1 run play each possession. And it was offset I, run up the middle, pistol formation, run up the gut. And then we had 1 sweep. And none of them went anywhere. But again, obviously really simplistic play calling in the run game there. And I think it was just we need to throw a run in here at some point before we go back to having, and they didn't really change personnel either. It was pretty much the entire time. It was just 11 personnel, right? You had 1 running back, you had 1 tight end, you had 3 wide receivers. And that was the whole fourth quarter.
Yeah. One play that stood out to me was early in the game, 3rd and 11 with about 4 minutes left in the first. Seahawks line up in this formation. It was technically 11 personnel because they had a tight end and a running back, but both of them were lined up kind of flanking the quarterback. And so we had your standard, 3 wide receiver sets out there. And then we had these 2 guys next to the quarterback. And they both stayed into block. I was like, okay, I get the thought process on this. Let's try to manufacture a pocket a little better, and then these guys can get open. But if you look at the route combination, it's 3rd and 11. Both of our outside receivers are running 20, 30-yard routes. And then probably JSN in the slot.
It was JSN.
Had a chance to look at the all-22, but I imagine that was JSN. Ran like a little button hook, but it was at the 15 to 18-yard range. It was immediately swallowed up because the defense is set to defend against a team looking to get, 11 to
12,
15
15 yards. Yeah, exactly.
So though I applaud the effort of trying to manufacture a pocket, the problem is that the other route combination, the routes in that play, didn't set up success for that. And then when you look at that, you have Jadeveon Clowney coming off the edge, right? This is a huge individual, right? Mm-hmm. He's athletic, a freak of nature. And now you're asking somebody to stand and block him when he has a 4-step momentum burst to get in there. I applaud the effort of trying to do what they were trying to do. The receivers' routes in that play were ridiculous.
Do you think maybe they could have had somebody else back there doing that besides the 215-pound Kenneth Walker?
Well, yes, 100%. In fact, Zach Charbonnet had one of the higher pass blocking grades by PFF for this game.
It's not a big bar. That's not a very high bar to clear here, Rob.
I wouldn't have had him back there. What I would have done is had guys on the line of scrimmage to extend the offensive line versus trying to have them, be blocking sleds back there, because that's all they turned into, because those guys had momentum.
And to your point, I know that we're kind of going wrong here, but I think one of the plays that we've seen that's kind of been the bread and butter for this offense is when they're in 11 personnel and they have that tight end chipping off the end of the line right there. What ends up happening is he engages and then releases, and we end up having a guy that's open with literally no defenders around. That's Kobe Parkinson's been play most of the season, is going up setting on that offensive line and chipping there and then releasing, and we end up having a free runner. And sometimes it works to great aplomb, sometimes it doesn't. But at the very least, it does give another second for Geno to step back in the pocket. If nothing's developing downfield, he still has that outlet to the tight end going wide in the flats there. So I mean, even if he's going to be in the back set, offset of QB and blocking from that position, obviously that's not as great because then you have the runner gaining ahead of steam and it's obviously closer to the QB at that point. But even then, if we have somebody that's going to be chipping and then releasing, that's something. There's some kind of outlet there. You didn't see that this game. And again, I know, Kenneth Walker being back there and having to block a guy that outweighs him by 40 pounds and is, built up out of steam is not exactly the best idea anyway. But the point is that bad adjustments in game, and we saw the Ravens reap the benefits of
it. Yep, 100%. All right, our third key to success was it's all about the ball. There was a stat that was thrown out. The Ravens are 6-0 when they generate one turnover. Not win the turnover battle, but just generate a turnover.
Yeah.
So we went into this thinking, hey, you got to take care of the ball. Let's see a lot of controlled offense so we can march down the field. We want to see, as always, a balanced game. Let's sprinkle that run in there, but also let's have short crossers. Let's use level concepts to take advantage of when they're in zone, blitz beater kind of things. That's what you expect when you're trying to take care of the ball. And so that's what I thought the game plan would be coming into this game. It's all about the ball, take care of the ball, take advantage of your opportunities, because this was a stout defense. And we knew those opportunities were going to be few and far between. So when you get the ball on a short field, or you're able to sneak into field goal range, you need to take advantage of those opportunities. And instead, we turn the ball over. And to tell you the truth, I'm actually not that upset about Geno's interception. It was a deep shot. He overthrew it. Okay, they got the ball. But it's going to happen at least one a game, right? So just, okay, that's the one. Don't make other mistakes. And then that strip sack at the end of the first half really kind of killed us.
I think where I'm going to push back on that, Rob, is just the fact that it didn't need to be a deep ball at that point. I mean, it's not like we were in like 3rd and long. We didn't need to be going for a 20-yard play then. We needed 8 yards to get a first down. We were still marching down the field. We were on their half of the field. There's no reason to take a deep shot at that point. Just none. And yeah, I mean, I get that. That's my only point. It was just an unnecessary deep shot. And yes, it's not like it was a very badly thrown ball by Gino, but this seems to be the problem that we get into, right? Where we're taking these unnecessary shots downfield in moments when we need 5 or 6 yards, and we decide to go for 15 or 20. And it's putting more pressure on the passing game than we need. And in this game, yeah, I mean, the 2 turnovers. It's not awful. I mean, it was a forced fumble and an interception that we technically had them pinned inside their own 20. So you think, okay, that's not so bad. But at that point, the defense had already been on the field over 15 minutes. So, I mean, situational awareness is also playing. The point is, we didn't take care of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, we clearly didn't. But I would. You said there's no point in doing it. I get the point that it wasn't necessary to be throwing deep balls at that point. It was an ill-advised throw because it was at least double coverage. I think there may even have been 3 players in on it.
Yeah, there was both high safeties were up behind him, and he did have the linebacker underneath. So yes,
underneath, yeah. So yeah, exactly. He's throwing it into 3 and then overshot it. If you're going to do that, you need to be extremely precise. It needs to be either back shoulder or absolutely in the bucket. You can't be throwing that any direction slightly off. You're just not going to make that throw. I would say this, right? I felt like we were incredibly predictable in our play calling and the stuff that we'd drawn up in the last 2 or 3 games. I think we've been very predictable. So in that situation, to have thrown something, I mean, yes, they had it covered, but it was still an unpredictable play call. I didn't see it coming. I do applaud them for trying to do something a bit different that maybe no one was thinking was going to happen. That is the first play call like that I've seen in a while where I thought I probably wouldn't have gone for that, and in a way I kind of give them props for having the balls to do that. But in reality, it was an unnecessary risk that we paid for. So you're absolutely right that we've got egg on our face, but it could also, on the flip side, if we had snapped off a few plays like that, perhaps it would have started to become easier to run the ball because they were having to stay high. Those safeties that were constantly blitzing and being involved in those packages may not have been able to do that. Maybe that allowed, so maybe if that does come off, it pays more dividends than we perhaps lost in the interception. Maybe there was a calculated risk in there with, okay, if we can start making these big splashy plays, the run game can then thrive. It opens up the playbook, and we, maybe the risk was calculated against that potential reward. But in reality, it failed.
Sure. Yeah. I think that the perfect kind of encapsulation by that is the final play by the Seahawks in Super Bowl 49. Yes. Was maybe going for that pick play the statistically correct thing to do? Sure. But we also knew who we had on personnel. And Pete Carroll's big thing has been, we do what we do, and they have to stop us. Okay, well, then let's just do what we do. Let's not try and outthink the opponent. Let's just do what we know we can do. And there are things that this offense does incredibly well, like multiple tight end sets where we utilize them both in the running and the blocking game. The defense has no idea what's coming because it can be either one of those things at any time when you have 3 tight ends on the end of your line. And we're not doing that. So,
yeah. And I will say, I will only say this briefly. I don't want to get into it here, but that was the correct decision to throw in that situation in the Super Bowl.
Robbie.
But just not where they threw it. If you want more on this, go watch the Luke Wilson interview on KJ Wright's podcast. It's fantastic. He goes into a little more into the offensive mindset around that particular call. It's fantastic. Couldn't recommend it anymore. All right. Our fourth key to success was I Spy, which was a play on what are you going to do for Lamar Jackson, right? Are we going to have a spy on him the whole time? Or are we just going to play our defense and hope he doesn't burn us, which the Seahawks over the past couple seasons, primarily just the past two when we were in the 3-4, mobile quarterbacks have been really difficult for this defense to stop. And I guess we weren't able to see because they really didn't stop Lamar Jackson.
Or anybody that was running the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, I haven't watched the All-22. I'll admit the mindset that I had, and I haven't gone back. For clarity, I haven't gone back and rewatched the game since Sunday because I couldn't make myself do it. It was an assignment that Rob had given me, and I apologize for failing that assignment, Rob. I just couldn't do it. And so I don't know like play by play exactly how this looked, but going back just in my head and remembering watching the game on Sunday, there was a lot of open field in front of Lamar, and it's not that that's a bad thing necessarily if we've got guys that are watching him and can immediately turn upfield, whether that be Jordan Brooks or I don't know, Tariq Woolen, somebody with some kind of speed on them to get there in time, or whoever we have range in the middle, like Jamal Adams or Julian Love, that's ostensibly the area that they're supposed to be covering. And yes, I finally threw the word in, Rob. You're welcome. But yeah, he had a lot of wide open lanes. And with some quarterbacks, I can understand the mindset of, hey, let's just cover the receivers. Let's make sure he can't throw the ball. But when you've got a guy like Lamar Jackson, he is a threat to take off at any given time, and you know that. So the fact that it didn't look like we were prepared for that probability was a little concerning to me, because it didn't look like we had planned for what do we do for Lamar Jackson. It looked like, well, the quarterback's going to drop back, and we're just going to make sure we've got the field covered, and then we'll be fine. When you have a guy that's got another element to his game like Lamar Jackson, and like we'll see when we play Dak Prescott or we play Jalen Hurts upcoming in the season, and I hate to say this, but Will Levis is coming up on the docket too, and he's kind of known for that little physicality and shiftiness because he certainly isn't accurate throwing the ball. So yeah, the fact that it didn't look like we really planned for that is a little concerning, because I think that up to this point, I thought that Coach Hurts had really kind of come into his own. And even though, yes, I know we can talk about, the defense being tired and having been out of the field for 40 plus minutes, it didn't look like we had a game plan to stop Lamar at all.
No, I don't think it looked like we had a particularly effective plan if we did have one. But I do think they presented us with a lot of problems. There was certainly we mentioned earlier Pete Carroll's sort of statement there, where he said that we do our thing and they adjust to us. Well, I feel like Baltimore did their thing and we didn't adjust, and they did the same thing the whole game, and we never got off the back foot. So yes, we didn't stop Lamar. Or perhaps we didn't have a good enough game plan to stop Lamar, but I don't think we stopped anything that they did, which, if you're stopping the other things and then it just remains to what do we do for Lamar, we can then adjust and do that. But I think we just failed to stop anything they did. It was not just Lamar, it was everything. Maybe it stems off that threat of him, using his legs. I think a lot of their game plan will be planned around, threatening that and then not doing it, and showing something else and then doing it. If you've got that threat, which we don't have, you do become more unpredictable, and teams do have to scheme up to cover more things. Granted, it's the obvious one. It's that when you play the Baltimore Ravens, one of the first things you think of is,
how do we stop Lamar?
If not, we're probably losing. So, granted, it was the important one. We didn't handle that well, but I don't think we handled anything particularly well, honestly, outside of the first two drives.
What I will say is, hats off to was that Keaton Mitchell? Is that the running back? Undrafted guy.
That is the rookie.
Yep.
That is the rookie running back that the Seahawks brought in for a visit, by the way. Didn't end up signing as a free agent. Yes.
Adam had him as a mid-round guy to watch. He ended up going undrafted, but
number 7 on our list of 10, buddy.
yeah,
my number 7.
Yeah, he wasn't on my list because I didn't choose to spotlight him in my late round guys. I thought the class was too stacked. I wanted
Whatever
to talk about
excuse you
other
want to
guys.
make, Rob.
But anyway, so I mean, he had a huge game, and part of that,
yeah, 9 rushes for 138 yards. Yeah, it's a pretty huge game. You're right.
Yeah, but part of that was because our defense was only able to generate 9 pressures this game, and that's sort of been their identity this year. Is they've been really tenacious at getting after the quarterback and creating those pressures. But in this game, they also missed 23 tackles, and that's a crazy number. They basically missed a third of the tackles they attempted.
Yeah, well, 22 of those were on Keaton Mitchell alone. So just go back and watch his runs in the fourth quarter. It's just like really a turnstile. Yes.
I just according to PFF, they credited them with 23 missed tackles.
Crikey. Well, that actually missed as many as the whole season, isn't it? I think we missed something like
almost doubled our
season.
Yeah, almost doubling our output. Yeah. Well, that leads us into our 5th key, Rob, if you want to push that up.
Yeah, exactly. So our 5th key to success was, where does Leonard Williams fit in? What does the new look Seahawks defense look like? And I thought this was a successful key, even though it wasn't specific. It was more of a question. Sure. But I liked what I saw when Leonard Williams was out there. He was out there pressuring. He looked really good working with his line mates there in the defensive line. So I think going forward, this is going to be a very positive addition for the Seahawks. I know all of us liked the trade when we were discussing that on trade deadline day, but being able to see it on the field, this would be one of my positive takeaways from this game, is that I like the potential, and we were seeing a little bit of that during this game.
Yeah. I very quickly go here. Sorry, Adam. Just I thought he was one of our better players in a sort of difficult performance for a lot of players. I think in better matchups for us, in more favorable matchups, I think we'll see him dominating more. But what we saw was a difficult matchup where he got some semblance of success. And I think if you can show up a little bit in that game, I think there are games where you'll completely blow them up. I very much hope he doesn't. I mean, in England we use a phrase, flat track bully. Which is a cricket term, where when the going's easy, a player can dominate, and when the pitch is right for you, a bowler can have a really good day. That would be very similar for what I hope isn't Williams's sort of look with us. I hope he does start blowing up in the big games rather than just sort of dominating the easier games. But I do think that might be key for him to get some momentum and sort of start to feel really comfortable in our line when he's getting some success, making big plays, bringing that energy. Because he's another guy like Adams and Witherspoon who really gets hot when things are going his way. So I do think he can be a catalyst for us. I think we saw some nice run stuffs and penetration through the offensive line without quite getting home sometimes. And the one thing he does do really well throughout his career is play with a really low pad height for a big guy, which makes him super hard to pick up on for the offensive line. So we saw all of those things. I hope he does it in the big games and as well as the lesser games. But I was really encouraged with him.
Yeah, and I hate to be the guy that's going to kind of put a negative spin on this, but I do want to put a little bit of a caveat on that. I mean, you go back and you watch, and again, I haven't watched the All-22, and I haven't rewatched the game since I watched the first week, but I didn't see a lot of double teams on Williams. Now, they have a decent offensive line there, so I think that maybe have been the mindset for the Ravens. Look, if one guy's going to beat us, okay, we'll take that. But I think that I love Pete Carroll, and I'm not trying to rag on Pete Carroll, but I do think Pete Carroll kind of gets in this mindset where he has these guys that he just loves who they are. I think Leonard Williams is one of those guys he's loved since his USC days, where he dreams about what this guy could be in his defense. And by the time he gets this guy is not the guy he was when he came out of college. Look, Leonard Williams has been in the league for 9 years now. I'm not saying he's not a great player. He is. He's not the impact player he was in his first 5 years in the league. He's just not. This is a guy who, when he was on the Jets defensive line, he was a dominant player. First season on the Giants defensive line, he looked like he had brought the Giants defense into their own. I don't know that he's going to be able to be that kind of player for us. I don't think we're gonna see as many double teams as maybe we had envisioned with him along the defensive line, to where we're going to be able to get other guys open. I think we saw that with this game. I think a lot of teams are just going to put one guy on him. They're going to say, okay, if Leonard Williams beats us, Leonard Williams beats us. It's a lot of the mindset they have sometimes with Aaron Donald, depending on the offensive schemes. And I think that he will have games where I think he will be able to kind of take over the game and he'll be that dominant guy. But I think those games are going to be fewer and far between than they have been in the past. And I don't know that I'm not in the Seahawks front office. I don't know what the mindset is there, but I don't know if that's what they were thinking they were going to get with Leonard Williams, if that's what they're going to actually get. So I think he looked good in this game. I think he had some great plays, and he definitely looked like he fits well with this scheme. But whether or not he's going to be opening up this scheme for other players to have those one-on-one opportunities that we thought they were going to have, I don't know. This game didn't give me a good look at that.
Well, there are some things that might change that. So Leonard Williams only played 41 snaps, I believe, out of 76 total. So just over 50%. Once again, he was only with the team for 3-4 days before they traveled to Baltimore. So we'll see as he fits more into this defense what they're asking him to do within this scheme. Another thing, talking about double teams, is the team, and we don't normally do transactions during this recap show, but the team put Drake Thomas on injured reserve and they activated Austin Theolu. I'm sure I got that wrong, but from the PUP list, and he's been practicing the past few weeks. This was his last week to be activated. And he's a big body nose tackle type. So that's somebody who, just due to sheer size, will almost command those double teams. So something to look forward to. That might be a way to get that rotation in there, and that might free up Leonard Williams a little bit more as well.
I think they already released him, didn't they, Theolu?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that, Rob, because I think they ended up actually. I'm pretty sure that they released him today also.
I'm pretty sure they activated him to release him and re-sign him to the practice squad to reset that clock. I think, provided so no one else snaps him up, or he doesn't want to resign. He was. Yeah, sorry, I just looked up. So he was released this morning. It's possible to re-sign him to the practice squad tomorrow, because I think it's a 24-hour rollover period, but there's no guarantee of that right now. So I think he comes back. So I don't think he's gone from, but they did activate him. You're absolutely right, and I think that in the absence of Monet, he's a a really good option. Although I think Cameron Young has shown some good stuff in flashes too. So should we have to rely on him? I think that's another thing. But again, he's that 6'3", 300-pound, smaller body, long arm, drop the anchor kind of nose that we've got with Jaron Reed as well. They're both 300, 6'3". They're very similar types. Monet and Theolu give a very different look at nose. So I completely take your point. I think that gives us something different to look at.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's been any debate. Sorry, I don't think there's been any debate about the talent or the number of playmakers that we have on either side of the ball here. I think whether we're talking about offense or defense, I think we all believe we have an incredibly talented Seahawks team here. I mean, the quote unquote fifth receiver on the depth chart here is Jake Bobo, and I think Jake Bobo has a long and storied career in this league moving forward.
Let's be honest, the fifth receiver on the depth chart is D. Eskridge.
Well, yeah, he's not. I'm just going to tell you, if we look right now, he's not listed as 5. It's Jake Bobo. But in any case, the point being, I don't think this is a question about talent. I think it's really just been about scheme and execution, and do we have the right people in place to do that moving forward? And I think that's been the big question this entire podcast, right? Is do we need to bring somebody in to be a run coordinator? Do we need to bring somebody in to be a play caller? And how does Clint Hurt move forward with all of these moving pieces on defense? And that's going to be the question moving forward.
I think when you look at the age of our roster and the fact that some game weeks we've had 19 rookies on the 53, that's a real. You mentioned earlier that we were a very talented defense. It's possibly the most talented defense we've ever had. It's definitely not the most experienced defense we've ever had. Those are two things that don't go together regularly. It's hard to have that full blend of experience and know-how and be young and talented and energetic. You need to strike a balance. When you look at, we spent a long time talking about what the Seahawks did badly or need to improve on. I think I'm going to tip my hat to the Baltimore Ravens at this point and say that's a very mature, well-schemed, well-drilled defense that we could not handle and couldn't scheme anything up to really, truly penetrate it on a consistent basis. And their offense was very well drawn up, and we didn't have an answer to it. There was experience and talent on the side there. You look at players like Patrick Queen and Hamilton that came into the league with really, really top billing and are really starting to perform at the level they were drafted to perform at. They've sort of slightly transitioned past being talented and now just being a very good set of players. We're still a little bit green in some areas on offense and defense, and what they really need when they are that inexperienced is good guidance, good play calling, and a scheme that they can understand and perfect. And I don't think we've hit those notes well enough to truly guide the young talent that we've got and fully harness it. Whereas the Baltimore Ravens feel a little bit like they've transitioned past being talented and just being well coached, and they've drafted well, and you've got to tip your hat at some point and say that's a franchise that are ready to truly contend.
Yeah, for sure. We've gone pretty long on this particular episode, so I'll just say, do either of you have any final thoughts on this game before we wrap it up?
I mean, I'm gonna let Mitch, if you want to go first, if there's anything, because I thought that was a really good summing up. But if you have anything else you want to kind of bullet point before I kind of jump in.
Yeah, I think the huge takeaway is can't wait to play the Manders next week. I'm ready for the next game. That's my big the big caveat here is that I just want to move on. I feel like I've already podcasted about this game with the We Talk Seahawks podcast as well. So I've sort of double dipped on this pain already. So I'm ready to just move on at this point. Honestly, I was really keen to come on when you messaged me this morning, but in reality, I'd already got my closure. I didn't need to relive this again. But it's been brilliant to talk about it. There have been points raised here that I think are really, really good, and I feel just ready to move on and put it out of mind at this point.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm certainly right there with you. I think that I'm looking forward to Sunday, if only for the effect of washing out this Ravens game from my mouth. But I do have some serious questions, and it's what changes are we going to make in the week leading up to the Commanders game? Do I think we need to make a ton of changes in order to come out with the Commanders game with a W? No, I don't. But I don't think the Commanders are the same kind of team as the Ravens are either. So I'm worried that what we're going to do is stick to business as usual. And not, we didn't talk too much about Pete Carroll's press or any of the press conferences that we heard over the last 2 days since the game. But you listen to Pete Carroll's press conference from today, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of changes in the wind. He said this was a rough game for them. He said that they have some things they need to correct and some things they need to fix, but he didn't think it was a personnel thing or a coaching thing. And I'm sorry, but those are literally the only two things that can be. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm like, yes, I'm very much looking forward to the Commanders game. I want to see this team right the ship or just go out and get a W. I mean, it doesn't even have to. I'm not expecting much out of this Commanders game. I'm kind of going into this, well, okay, this is a game that we should win. Will we win it? And that's pretty much where I'm at. But I think that there are some serious changes that need to be made, some things that need to be addressed, and so there needs to be for lack of a better term, a come to Jesus moment with this team. That I think that's something that Richard Sherman and other people have kind of talked about before. But this team really needs it. We've got to figure out, can we recognize that changes need to be made, and can we make those changes? And that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that we're not going to be able to recognize that we need to make some significant changes moving forward. And And I don't know that that's going to make a big difference as far as the actual total of the season goes. I still think the Seahawks probably make the playoffs at this point. I think 9-7 is a very easy thing to get to at this point. I think 9-8 is a very easy thing to get to this point. I think 10-7 is entirely possible. And that might be enough to get us to the playoffs. But I don't think that the Seahawks fans, and certainly me personally, are used to just sitting in mediocrity. I think that we need to see some positive regression here. We need to see some steps moving forward. And I'm hoping that this next week is where we kind of start down that road. So that's where I'm at.
For me, I like to try to keep a positive attitude, even if I don't always portray that when we're talking about past events on this podcast. If it's one thing the Russell Wilson era and the Pete Carroll era really has taught us, it's we always have a chance in Seattle. This is probably one of the few games where I just knew we were going to lose at some point during the game. But in most other games, we could be behind by 2 scores with less than 4 minutes in the fourth quarter. And I'm like, all right, we got a chance. So I will take that positivity. I will take that mindset and move it forward. I will also apply that mindset to all this negativity surrounding Geno Smith. And this is something I know Adam and I will definitely talk about on our next episode because we didn't really have time for it on this one. But he has the talent. He has the familiarity with this team and with these receivers and with this offensive coaching staff. They can get it together. And if they can't get it together, the team has an out in his contract after this season. I don't want that to happen, but there's enough talent on this team that they can get it fixed and they can right the ship. So let's go on to next week. Let's move forward. Commanders, here we come. Sadly, this won't be a Cody Barton revisited game, as I believe he's on injured reserve right now. But let's get out there. Let's mop the floor with some Commanders next week. Let's reset the clock. Let's reset our momentum and move forward for the rest of this season. Thank you for listening to the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast. Thank you, Mitch, for joining us on short notice.
Oh, you're welcome.
And for all of you out there in the podcast world, thank you for watching, listening. If you want to watch and see our beautiful faces, you can catch us on YouTube. Just search Let's Talk Seahawks and we'll be there. Thank you, everybody. And as always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.